Hi, this is Nicole Kelly, and this is She Brew in the City. If you like what you hear and want to hear more of it, you can subscribe and also follow me on Instagram at She Brew in the City to see what my life is like day to day. I'm also on Patreon if you'd like to have access to some special episodes and offers. Looking for tips and tricks on a new city? Top Dog Tours is the best place to check out walking tours. We are in Boston, Philadelphia, Toronto, and New York City. Visit us on topdogtours.com to book your tour today and check us out on social media for offers, discounts, and pictures. Hi, this is She Brew in the City. I'm Nicole Kelly, and today I am talking with Pam Wiznitzer, who is a master mixologist and Instagram influencer. She's laughing. Hi, Pam. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. Like I said, I'm tired, but that's kind of par for the course. I feel like that's just my answer every day. I'm always tired. I think I was born tired.
That's completely fair. And it is a Monday morning. So
it is true.
You are allowed to be tired.
And Hanukkah is coming up. I know we're going to be releasing these all over the place, but it is the Monday before Hanukkah and we have lots of events. So I'm sure that's part of the reason I'm just emotionally exhausted in preparing for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big week.
Yes.
You gotta get ready for those 8 crazy nights.
At least I know when it is. My mom, I guess, Googled when Hanukkah was, and for some reason didn't look at the year that came up. And she thought it was starting later because it starts later next year. So she was a little stressed about having to get like all my daughter's presents together and shipping them and everything. So I'm glad
that Jewish calendar just doesn't like to keep put each
I know.
year.
Next year, I think it starts on Christmas Eve. It ends in January, which I don't think it's ever been in January in my entire life.
So I don't know so my bat mitzvah was December 28th of the year of
Yes.
But it was the 5th day of Hanukkah.
Oh.
So that year, I think it ended on the 31st.
Okay.
So the 30th. So that's the closest I can recall. But that was, obviously that's ingrained in my head.
The year thing, I was called my mom last night because I was doing math, is next in March of 2024 will be the 25th anniversary of my bat mitzvah.
Wow.
So I was like, I got to do like a special episode about bat mitzvahs because of my big anniversary. So let's go ahead and get started talking about you. So Pam, where are you originally from and how did you end up in New York City?
So I was born in New York. I was born in Queens, but I didn't stay there. When I was just about 2.5 years old, we moved to Cleveland, Ohio. So I grew up in Shaker Heights. A lot of people recognize it from that book, Little Fires Everywhere. If you've read that before, yeah. So that's my suburb. And then I came back to New York for college. I went to Barnard College and the Jewish Theological Seminary. I did the dual degree program because I thought it was totally normal for an 18-year-old to be having like 7 to 8 classes a semester. But I found out later that wasn't true.
It's a lot of schoolwork.
It's a lot of school. But I was like, yeah, double bang for your buck, 2 degrees for the same price. So what's better than a good bargain?
How was that? As far as like your actual social life or being able to even do anything, taking that many classes?
I didn't know any different. So I had a very robust social life. I was out all the time. I thought it was normal. I had no idea my other friends just at Barnard or Columbia were taking 4 classes a semester.
Yeah.
So that really blew my mind senior year. I was like, wow, this is different.
That's a very full load. So what was it like growing up Jewish in Ohio, and what was your Jewish upbringing like in general?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are not aware of how robust the Jewish community is in Ohio. Actually was talking about this with somebody yesterday, and because someone was like, oh, Cleveland, that must be like a small Jewish population. And I was like, no, it's totally the opposite. At one point when I was younger, Cleveland was the 4th highest donating federation. Just to give you an idea across the country. So I grew up in a suburb that was really diverse, that I'm grateful for. But we were surrounded by other suburbs that were very enriched with Jewish culture, Jewish community, like right next to ours. So I don't know. I was in this wonderful bubble of the conservative movement. I'm pretty much your poster child. So someone's like, what's the conservative movement look like? It'd be like me on a poster with like my hand up saying, hi, I'm from the conservative movement. I went to like synagogue every weekend. I was that kid in front singing Eloheinu at the end on the bima. I did USY and Kadima. I like had massive leadership positions within there. I went to Camp Vermont. I I went to Barnard and JTS. Like anything that is associated with the conservative movement, I did it. So yeah, we kept Shabbat in my house every week. It was really beautiful. It's how I learned how to cook. I would like make Shabbat meals at a certain age. My mom would let me take over and do that. And Judaism was just really, I went to Jewish day school until 8th grade. Then I wanted to go to public school. So it was really very much infused. It's like in the core of my soul. That's like how I know the world. I know the world through a Jewish lens. And I think that's really beautiful.
Would you still consider yourself conservative? Do you belong to a synagogue here in the city?
It's so funny because I do consider myself conservative, although I don't practice in the same ways. I don't belong to a synagogue. I think I find a lot of people who are not married or with families around our ages don't really belong where, but I do love going to programming and holidays at Sutton Place Synagogue. I really love what the rabbis do over there. I love their programming. They're so welcoming, and I spend all my high holidays there. So that's been a really lovely community to be a part of here in New York.
I think you're really right. It is kind of hard to find like a home base. There are a lot of 20s and 30s young people programming all over the city, but a lot of it's tailored to like families and the family unit. We didn't join a synagogue until we had a daughter because it's easier to do your own thing when you're just an adult, but when there's a kid, it changes.
Yeah. And I think we're making better efforts to creating opportunities for adults who are between like 20s to 30s and early 40s if you don't have a family to be a part of that. And there's definitely wonderful organizations like MJE, I think does a really fabulous job. There's a lot of really cool, like there's a center down in Tribeca that does cool programming. But, I think a lot of things change when you have a family.
A lot of things include
life cycle events.
Yeah, the episode we just released was kind of like my interview and talking about how just even finding my way back to Judaism in general was a thing that happened when I had my daughter. So it makes a lot of sense. So how did you get involved in the hospitality industry?
When I was at Barnard and at JTS, I actually was signed up to take the Columbia Bartending Academy course. And it's just this course that teaches you the basics of bartending. And back then it was not as robust as it is now. And if you place at the top of it, you can then get jobs like bartending around the city, like small jobs, like pouring wine and beer at places. So I took the course just for fun because my friends taught it. I didn't think anything of it. This was the year 2006. Oh my gosh, sorry. I didn't mean to give dates, but here we are. And
it's fine. That's the year I met my husband. So we're not judging how long things ago are
good. Here. Great. And I did it just like for fun and I really loved it. I latched onto it pretty quickly. But I think at that time I was, in college, we were all drinking. So it was like fun to know how to make a French martini. When in the recession of 08 and 09, I lost my job and I was trying to find some quick employment. And a few of my friends knew a manager at a bar and they're like, hey, you could bartend if you want on the side. And because I knew how to, and I was like, okay, so here I come out into this world with like 2 degrees from 2 like really wonderful universities. And I like already had a year and a half of like corporate work under my belt. And I go into daytime bartending and my parents were just, I don't want to say they were livid, but they were pretty shocked. And I think the other big part is that in the Jewish world, we see a lot of people who cook. We don't see a lot of people who work in booze unless it's on like the managerial sides of it, right? Or owning a liquor brand or working for a liquor company. You don't really see a lot of people bartending or owning bars. That's not really in the Rolodex of the careers that we say.
Doctor, lawyer, teacher.
Lawyer, bartender.
Yeah, bartender.
Yeah. So I always joked that my mom would go to synagogue and they'd be like asking how everyone's kids are. And someone's like, David's doing great in medical school. And so it's like, Sarah's loving law school. And they're like, how's Pam at the bar? And my mom's like over here a little bit like it's such a shanda, right? Like a shame.
It's funny that you say that because my great grandmother who lived in Ohio actually owned a nightclub and bar.
Yes.
So
We love
this was
that.
in the 30s, and it was actually in a black neighborhood. So they catered to a lot of the black community. So it was kind of crazy. And my great aunt has stories of sleeping in like the front window. The police would make sure everything was kosher and stuff. So she comes from a long line of that. Her mother actually owned a tea room in Russia. And my great grandmother would smuggle alcohol on the train so that the tea room had liquor. So there are at least a few Jews who were involved with owning bars.
We absolutely do have like a very dynamic and rich background and history of owning venues. You know, it's just like over the years things have changed
Yes,
a
for
lot, I'd
sure.
say. And so that was really fun. You know, I laugh a lot as to where I was then and about how I came about into this, but I just started daytime bartending, and I kind of parlayed that into a bigger career in mixology and beverage consumption, consumer engagement. And here we are today.
Daytime bartending is very different, I would assume, than nighttime bartending, especially depending on the neighborhood that you're
Is
in.
It is, but what people forget about daytime bartending is it's really about the care and consideration of the people who sit with you, because a lot of them are there for lunch with like a drink
Hmm.
or early drinks after work, and they want to talk. So for me, it was this really incredible experience of meeting people and providing ultimate hospitality, especially because we were like next to a cancer hospital.
Mm.
We were in an area with a lot of like constructions. We had a lot of construction people. So we had like a really beautifully diverse range of individuals who would come into our bar. And sometimes I really kind of felt like I was Sarah with the angels. And I was just like here to like make sure you're like, you know, you're doing well here. I'm gonna like serve you, make sure you're feeling great when you walk out the door, because you get more time, which is really unique.
That makes a lot of sense, which leads me to another question I had that I was going to ask a little bit later, but you kind of already talked about it. You know, a lot of people sit behind a bar just literally to have someone to talk to. Why do you think that people traditionally feel really comfortable opening up to bartenders?
Well, I think it completely depends on the bartender. This is a great question. A few reasons. I think, you know, depending on the person, alcohol can create a sense of ease for
Hmm.
some people. So for those who need a little bit of liquid courage, that can kind of open up the pathway. If you have a really great bartender, a bartender doesn't only want to just give you a drink; they want to make sure you're having an experience, and so it's
Hmm.
very genuine. And we're energy readers, right? So we see how you come in. If you're feeling like you have a big load on you, if you have less stress, like we're here to de-escalate that. We're here to, you know, make sure that we turn that around before you leave. So when you earn somebody's trust, they want to open up to you immediately. And also, a lot of people who come to the bar, especially like certain hours of the day, sit solo. They're not, it's not
Hmm.
always like two people coming together. When you sit solo, you're kind of looking for any experience to interact with another person. So when you give them an inch, they might take like a few more inches or a mile if you let them. So that I think that is those are the biggest components as to why you'll find people opening up to bartenders.
So you're working as a daytime bartender. At this point, did you start experimenting creating cocktails or did that come later?
Yeah, so initially I was just your vodka soda Bud Light girl, and I got really good at serving those quickly. But there was this really incredible wave of mixology starting to happen. I feel like a lot of people remember in like the '08 to 2012, we had this what we call like the second golden age of cocktails, that of resurgence where people were using fresh juice and fresh ingredients. There was a lot of innovation happening. It's when the real big speakeasy movement started.
Mm.
And I remember being very interested in all of it. So I would bring in my own ingredients to the sports bar and I would make these cocktails, and I get in a lot of trouble because no other bartender could recreate them. But I was having so much fun because I could do things on my own time. And I remember seeing this amazing magazine article in Time Out New York where they were like the best bartenders of New York. And I just remember seeing on the cover all these men and one woman. Her name is Megan Dorman. She's a friend of mine now. And I thought it was so atrocious that only one woman was on there. And I said, there's no way. There's only one woman. No way. They just probably didn't do their due diligence. And I also looked at the picture and I was like, I could get in there. I could do that. Like if they can all do it, I can do it. So that was kind of the catalyst that lit a fire under me to start studying and learning and get involved in that area of the hospitality world.
Why do you think that, at least back then, I can't speak for now, it was such a male dominated field or male forward facing field?
So many reasons. Um, Number one is that a lot of the women who worked in bars worked at high volume clubs and bars, like places where you like burn and churn, and you make a lot of cash really easily, right? So they weren't working at like speakeasy bars. There were actually a ton of women who were, um, but we love to showcase the men. We love to like ignore the women and showcase. So there were really brilliant, brilliant women like my friend Natasha David or Erin Reese, were definitely at the forefront. My friend like Lynette Marrero, where they were all out there, but they were being completely overlooked. I think the other part about it that we still don't speak about, and even to this day, is that if a woman wants to go ahead and start a family, being pregnant and being behind a bar, people do it, but it gets hard at some point. And
Yeah.
then when you have the child, it's all about like, do you have enough childcare? Can you actually work long bar shifts anymore? So a lot of
Hmm.
people transition from being a bartender into bar owner, a manager. So that's why maybe you would see during that time less women there. And also we've beefed up security. I think it's the other part to have like a woman close down a bar or work the latest shift. You need to make sure that that place is very secure.
I hadn't even thought about that, but that makes complete sense. Do you find have you found within your career that there were challenges you faced as a female bartender and mixologist?
Uh, when I started, I was in my 20s, and so I think my biggest difficulty wasn't just the fact that it was a room of men, but it was a room of older people who didn't want to take me seriously. So I would like be butting my elbows into a space with people in their like 30s, 40s, 50s, and
Hmm.
they half the time wouldn't give me the time of day or wouldn't take me seriously, which was unfortunate. Um, I have not found as many issues with men in the industry. In fact, like a lot of men have been insanely supportive of my career. A lot of men have been my mentors. I've always been a guy's girl, so maybe that's also a different part of it. But my biggest thing is in getting into spaces, I just wanted to ensure that I threw that rope back for more women to then come into the space. So if you can wiggle yourself into a little bit, you can throw that rope back and then start bringing everybody else in with you. So,
I love that
and there's been a,
analogy.
yeah, yeah. So at least for me, it was okay. I mean, there was this Mean Boys Club at one point, but I turned it on them. So
I love that you kind of came in and created a space for yourself, and like you said, kind of are left space for women to kind of come in behind you. So you have a master's degree in food studies, which I did not think was a thing, but makes complete sense now that I know it's a thing. So what inspired you to go back to school and get your degree? Did you have to write a thesis? What type of classes do you take for a degree like this?
so NYU has the leading program in food studies, undergraduate and graduate level, and it was 2011, and I wanted to take bartending and mixology very seriously, and I thought for to show my parents that the only way I could earn their trust was by going back to school, which is
It's very Jewish.
it's so Jewish on so many levels. They're like, I gotta prove it to you. You know, it's like the ultimate like Jewish guilt, right?
Yes.
So I applied to the program because I also wanted it for myself. I wanted to show people it wasn't just an interest or a hobby in this. It wasn't just a career, but it was academics and education.
Hmm.
And I wanted that backbone. So I went into the program and I did a focus on beverages. And for my thesis, I actually spent the summer of 2014 driving all across America because I wanted to learn how and why people drink in different parts and regions of the country. What's being
Interesting.
offered. Yeah, so I had a road trip that was about almost 3 months long, 40 cities. Uh, it was a wild experience. I've never driven the country before, which I suggest every person in this world should do. America is truly beautiful. We don't know it.
I've never done it. My husband's done it twice.
Oh my God,
He
it's
he
great.
had to bring furniture across the country and then a car, and he's gone the northern route and the southern route. So, and I don't like being in a car for more than like 6 or 7 hours. Being from LA and his family was in the Bay Area, we do like up and down California a lot, but I kind of
Yeah.
hit a wall. So I feel like I'd need to make a lot of stops if I ever drove across the country.
Yeah. And actually, if you did that, like 6, 7 hours is kind of like max per day. Like, trust me, I pushed it some days to 8 or 9, but you can do it. Anyone can do it. And I just highly suggest it. You learn so much, not just about yourself, but like about other parts of this country and the people and the communities. And I wanted to understand that because coming from New York, which is most of my life, and then obviously Ohio, I spent time in some other cities, but not significant time. And I wanted to really see things differently.
Is there a place that you found that people drink drastically differently than, here or Ohio or other major cities like Los Angeles or Chicago?
I wouldn't say anybody drinks drastically differently. Now, remember, this was 9 years ago. So a lot
Yeah,
has obviously
of
shifted in the
course.
country. But what is telling is that it's the age ranges of who's drinking, what they're consuming,
Hmm.
and the rate of consumption. But there's a lot of other factors that come into play, including is there mass transportation available in those cities? Because the driving culture, and then obviously
Yeah.
that's going to affect things. I found that careers, like the top careers and industries, also affect how people are drinking and demographics of age. So it was truly fascinating. But there's some really cool spots around the country. Like I went to Boise, Idaho, that has a huge Basque community and Basque like cuisine, which I had no idea about, and they had phenomenal cocktail bars. So that was pretty rad. I would have never gone there otherwise.
It's so interesting you talk about transportation because I'm originally from LA, but we moved to New York before Uber and Lyft were a thing. So when we first came to New York, first of all, the idea of bar hopping is not really a thing in LA. You kind of plant yourself and you're like, because you don't want to get in a car, you couldn't drive. So when we moved here, it's like, oh, we're going to go to like 4 different bars in one night. Like, what is, you go down to the village and kind of just go around to places. So that was weird. Also, like the idea of buying rounds was like really a thing here where it's like, well, I'll buy at this bar and then you buy at that bar. Whereas in LA, at least when I was younger, it was like we all paid for our own drinks. And then going back to LA after we have now like Uber and Lyft, it's changed so much. I remember there was one Halloween when we were in college, we wanted to go down to West Hollywood for the parade and we couldn't find a cab. Like we were calling cab companies. So like, it's so interesting. I guess it makes complete sense that transportation would play a huge part in drinking culture and how much people are drinking and where they're drinking and the proximity to where they have to get to. That's so interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was there a place that you, maybe not that people were drinking so differently, but like a very unique drinking culture somewhere in the United States?
A unique drinking culture. That's a fabulous question. I mean, I definitely like in parts of Texas. I mean, that's obviously like margarita land. It's it was more agave focused than anywhere else before tequila and mezcal like really sprung up around the world, and that has everything to
Hmm.
do with obviously the Mexican border. But they've always been at the forefront of like Mexican flavors and cuisines. And so, I mean, while the margarita has nothing to do, honestly, with Mexico, it was an American invention.
I didn't know
It
that. Oh my gosh. When was the
Yeah,
margarita invented and where?
the margaret they don't know the exact date, but they do know that because agave spirits I think came into America around like the 1950s and nobody really knew what to do with it. What was big at the time, people were making sidecars with cognac. So someone's like,
Okay.
okay, normally cognac is some simple syrup, lemon juice, and cognac. So if I kind of change it out and I use tequila, they will do like lime and they use like a triple sec or sugar. They made that drink, and margarita means daisy. So they called it a daisy because a daisy is the category of sour drinks. That's what we call sour drinks. They're called daisies.
Huh.
So naturally, because margarita is sour and it takes the shape of a sour style drink, that's the name.
I
So that's really that came out of America, clearly, because they drink more like palomas down in Mexico than they do margaritas.
I think that's so American that we're like, this thing that we're passing off is from another culture, but was really created like here, kind of this inspiration from maybe, immigration and, kind of
Oh yeah, don't
creating
even
something.
don't even get me started on Cinco de Mayo. Like we don't have to go there on this
Cinco de
podcast, but like
Drinko.
yeah, it is 100% American driven. It was created by beer companies to sell more beer. They only celebrate it in Puebla in all of Mexico. Like we should not be celebrating it here in the United States unless you have like a community of people who are like from Puebla that want to like do it and you celebrate with them.
It's kind
It's
of how
awful.
I feel about Oktoberfest. Like we visited Munich and we went to the Hofbrauhaus and a lot of other breweries, and they're like, we hate Oktoberfest. It's a bunch of drunk American tourists. And,
Yeah.
we had an employee from Germany that was like, if you want to go to a beer festival, a lot of the smaller towns in Bavaria are better than Oktoberfest. So, and also
Leave
like,
it to America to ruin everything, of
I know.
course. Like that's
As
what
far
we're
as
good
like
at.
drinking, it's fine. We also have the best holiday in New York City, SantaCon. Um, which, if you're not from New York City, SantaCon is a holiday where the bridge and tunnel people those are the people who have to take bridges and tunnels into the city. They dress up like Santa and they start drinking at like 9 a.m. and just they're on the trains and they're running around the city being obnoxious. And I usually try not to work that day because it's literally the worst day in New York City. Have you ever bartended on SantaCon?
Okay, so a few things about SantaCon. When SantaCon was first started, it was only a handful of a few hundred people. And I know this because I was there during the very beginning before Time Out New York covered it, because I had friends
Yeah.
who went. And the idea was people who came together, you would like carol in the streets for people. You would bring food that would go to like a hunger drive at like
So it
bars.
was
Like you were
actually
supposed
like
to
a
bring
nice
food.
thing to start with.
Totally was nice. And the idea was just like a few hundred people, and it was to give an influx of money during the daytime shifts to bars. So they
Oh,
would, and you were supposed, and they would kind of give heads up to the bars ahead of time saying like, we're going to bring these people. Uh, and there was like all these rules, like don't be a dick, don't, be
yeah.
nice. And that was the idea. Like we would all take a picture together somewhere. Then the young people really like super found out about it and it all got ruined. I turned into what it is now. But of course, that's very normal. So yes, I have partaken in SantaCon when I was really, really young. There's pictures of it. Some people found them and they still make fun of me to it today. I have bartended during SantaCon. I think at the end of the day, when it comes to this, and by the way, this is not just in New York, this is in other cities. When you see SantaCon, just run the other direction or keep
Yeah.
yourself safe. And if you happen to be in a bar where anything like that hits, just always look at your staff and just ask them, say, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" That's the best that we can do.
I'm obsessed with the fact that this started out as like a charity thing and kind of became the
Yeah.
worst day in New York City, which is
Word.
saying a lot because New
Is
Yorkers
it
will
this
kind of just
weekend?
like, I hope not. I think it's the ninth.
That's this
I'm
weekend.
not leaving the Upper West Side then. But I,
I'll be at a bat mitzvah in Omaha, so I'm gonna
so
avoid it
you're
this
good. So you're
year.
good. You're good.
Thank goodness.
I'm obsessed with that. It used to be something like quaint and adorable and it became kind of crazy. Do you have a favorite cocktail to make? I know you started out making a lot of vodka sodas, you said. Like as time went on, was there a cocktail that became your favorite to make? Is it a cocktail you created?
I When anybody asks me this question, I always say, and it's not even a blanket statement, it just is true. Like my favorite cocktail to make is the one that the guest wants and the one that makes them happy because there's really nothing better than someone sitting at your bar and talking through what they might want, making them something based upon uh, their parameters and desires, and then you put it in front of them and they have this big huge grin on their face because they just feel like so special in that moment that you actually listened to them or gave them something that they liked. Um, so those are my favorite moments, and I think that's like I honestly think that's one of the best parts of bartending in general.
I love that you keep bringing up hospitality. As an actor, I worked in restaurants for years, and there was one concept. Do you remember Blue Water Grill in Union
Yeah,
Square? So I
of
worked there
course.
for RIP Blue Water Grill. That building is
I
still
know.
empty too, by the way. There's nothing there. It's kind of crazy. So they talked a lot about what they called second level service, kind of going above and beyond. And I love that you keep bringing this up because I think for a lot of people, we've all been to restaurants, where it's just like, this is clearly just a job and people almost seem to be hating their lives a little bit. But I love going to restaurants where people are providing that hospitality and really doing something extra to take care of somebody. I think it's amazing when people make this like a legitimate career and the idea of hospitality and that second level service. I love that you keep bringing that up.
Yeah, it's very easy for any job to be a job.
Yeah.
It's very easy. And I'm not here saying that like when you work in hospitality, especially service oriented positions, that you have to go above and beyond because there could be a level of like abusiveness that can happen between, guest exchanges if, something's taken, taken advantage of or out of context, or if
Yeah.
you feel like you have to do something because you're doing it for a tip, that's a whole other
Yeah.
conversation. However, I love people. Like I really love people. I've always loved people since I was a little girl. And I think the part about hospitality that I enjoy the most is the opportunity to make someone's day just with a little bit of kindness. Because if someone could have the worst day in the world, come into your bar or restaurant, you just offer like a smile and like a little bit of kindness, and it can change everything. And it doesn't take much. Kindness is free.
I love that.
Kindness
I'm
is
going to put
free.
that on a bumper sticker. Kindness is free. I think we need a
Yeah.
little more kindness, especially with everything that's going on right now.
Oh yeah.
It's a
Totally.
crazy time. So,
Yes.
so your favorite cocktail to make is whatever would make someone put a smile on their face. Do you have a favorite cocktail to drink?
I am a I'm a situational drinker, so drink based upon where I am, which is great. I don't ever like really navigate towards one thing or another, but if I had to like round out a list of top faves, I'd say it could be like a Negroni, a 50-50 gin martini, meaning it's like half vermouth, half gin, which is great because then you can have more of those because you're not gonna wind up on the floor as easily. um, I really love grasshoppers, which is like this creamy mint drink. You kind of can only have one of them, but they're worth it. And this tropical drink that's called a jungle bird that a lot of people don't know about that is absolutely divine.
When you're off the clock, is there a specific bar or restaurant you like to visit to go for a cocktail?
When I'm off the clock, I wouldn't say that there's one place that I like to go to. I think there are definitely certain bars and neighborhoods that if I'm ever around that area, I like to pop in, even if it's just to say hi to the staff. I sometimes like to do that, but I don't have like a cheers moment. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I don't have a place that is just my cheers. Because I do like to just what I call like distributing the wealth. I like to ensure that like if I have a dollar, that I am very conscious of where that dollar is going to go, and is it worth going to the same place over and over? Is there a new place that just opened that you can support, get to know the people, especially if it's in your neighborhood? Is it woman owned? Is it minority owned? There's a lot of opportunity to invest our dollars in really phenomenal ways.
So you've worked at a lot of different concepts. Is there a bar or restaurant that really stands out to you in terms of a good experience working there, or a great ambiance, or some really great ownership?
I There was a bar that was on the Upper East Side. It's no longer around. It was called Seamstress. Um, it was open for about 3.5 years. And it's funny because so many people still to this day come up to me and like they'll see me randomly and they're like, we really miss that bar. Or I think about that bar all the time. And it was such a big moment for the Upper East Side because we didn't have a cocktail experience up here. And so it was kind of like
Hmm.
one of the first like really high end cocktail bars. And it was really comfortable and wonderful. And I led the bar program, and our staff, there was about like two or three iterations of our team and our staff. Like we just really were a cohesive unit. And you have to be careful about using the term family because not everybody attributes to working in staffs as family, and that can be a little dangerous, especially as people have different relationship with family dynamics. But we all felt we were like a family unit in some ways, and we're all still very close. We have a text thread that's like 5 years strong. That everyone's highly successful now doing different jobs, but there was something really special about that. I've met a lot of people who were like, our first date was at Seamstress, or we got engaged at Seamstress, or all these really hysterical stories that even to this day I get from random people, which is great, or DMs in my Instagram inbox.
Why do you think the Upper East Side doesn't have a lot of concepts like that?
The Upper Side has changed drastically in the past 10 years, even the past 5 years. And we do now. Now we actually have like a decent amount of like really good cocktail bars. I think, as the Second Avenue subway opened, as we had an influx and change of who was living in this area, we finally were able to get a lot of really interesting venues, restaurants, businesses to start opening up here. So now I'd say I'm really proud. Like we were not the East Village or the West Village, like with that high amount of concentration of bars or restaurants, but we do have a lot of our own. And so if you wanted to just stay here and like not go downtown, you'd be very happy. And that makes me really proud, to be able to see concepting like that.
Are you also a wine drinker, or do you stick strictly to cocktails and spirits?
I love wine. I love wine so much. And I have a lot of friends who are sommeliers. So it's a very privileged position to be in, to be surrounded by some of the most brilliant wines minds. And I've been fortunate to like go to lots of wineries to meet the winemakers themselves around the world. I think wine is such like a beautiful process, um, and a really beautiful industry. And I think it's changed drastically in the
Hmm.
past 10 years. And you see wine feels cool. It used to feel really stuffy. And now there are so many people that are changing um, that stereotype. So it's much more accessible. It's younger. It's fun.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm very grateful for that change up.
I'm a wine drinker. I'm not really a cocktail and spirits person because I like sweet stuff. And a lot of people kind of stray away from sweet cocktails. So there aren't always a lot of options. My husband is a cocktail drinker. He experiments with making cocktails. He loves drinking cocktails.
Great.
The hugest, we have the hugest personal bar because he's a member of a liquor club. So he gets with this membership a lot of bottles and tasters. So it looks like we have a literal full bar in our apartment. It's kind of crazy.
I get it. I have over 700 bottles in my apartment because it's
So
essentially my work
where do you
studio.
keep all of that in a New York
Um,
apartment?
I've got three racks, wire racks that are just full of alcohol on one wall in my
Wow.
apartment. Yeah, but it's my office.
Yeah.
So I pull from that when I'm experimenting or working on any concepts for clients.
No, that
So,
makes complete sense.
some people have, file folders. I have wine bottles and like spirits bottles.
I think wine bottles and spirit bottles are much more fun than having a filing cabinet like I have sitting right next to me.
It's just different.
Speaking of, wine being fun and things changing, do you think American palates are becoming better or different over time? And if so, why do you think that is?
Yeah, the American palate has definitely shifted over the past 15 years. The biggest change that we've seen is the American palate gravitating towards bitterness as a flavor, which is
Hmm.
something that's very keen in Europe, especially obviously the Italian areas. And that has a lot to do with travel. As America has become like pretty obsessed with travel, and
Yeah.
exploration. And obviously the younger generation, it's at the forefront of their favorite pastimes.
Yeah.
And
People
with that,
spend, it goes like household things and then experiences as far as like spending.
yeah, and it's great because what it's doing is it's diversifying the portfolio of things that we're eating and consuming here in America. We're having more global access. So bitterness is a really fascinating flavor because while everything else we are kind of born with, sour, sweet, umami, savory, salty, bitterness is learned. You're not born liking bitter things. You have to actually train your palate to like it. So when you taste something that's bitter, um, when you're younger or even like, mid 20s or something, like you may not like it. And you're like, this is gross because you actually have to keep going back at it
Yeah.
in order to start understanding it and train your palate to like it. So that's why a lot of people, when they have an Amaro or something like Campari or a Negroni, they don't like it initially. But
Hmm.
after a few times, you start craving it because you develop bitterness. So that's been something that's very fascinating here in America. Obviously, like the Aperol Spritz is a great example of that.
My
And we
husband's
also
shaking
do,
his head yes.
yeah, right. He's like, this all makes sense. And then we also are getting drier palates. Now, this depends where you live in America. There are definitely places that still skew towards sweeter profiles, but a lot of places that used to be like, oh, like more sugary, more sweet drinks. Like now you see drinks that like people want things that are more sour, drier, less sugar. And a lot of it has to do with also the health and wellness movement of how people are eating. So as you change your eating habits and what your body craves, that will change up what you desire also for what you're drinking. So if you are cutting out more sugar, you're not going to want to crave that in your drink and you're going to want to crave other flavors. So it's been
Interesting.
yeah. And also we're seeing less drinking. And that's also really amazing. The low proof, no proof movement is pretty strong with these days.
So you talked about having all these bottles in your apartment to create new cocktails. Can you walk me through the process of what you need to do to create a new cocktail and how long that takes and all what goes into all of that?
Yeah. It firstly, there's nearly no such thing as a new cocktail because everything follows the same format. There's like 6 formats of cocktails, and from there you kind of make changes and tweaks. So you can't ever say like this is brand new original, but uh, the most important thing is understanding and identifying the main flavor that you want to highlight. So I often start with an ingredient or a flavor or a concept or sometimes a color, and then I work my way around
I
that.
love the color thing because I'm such a visual person, and the way a
Yes.
drink looks, I'll never forget. This is a little off topic. I don't remember where we were. We were like somewhere in the West Village because I wanted to go somewhere for my birthday, and there was like a cocktail place. Or no, it was going back. So there was like a tea place, and they also had cocktails, and there was glitter in the cocktail my husband ordered, like literal glitter, and we were finding glitter on him for like 4 days. Which never put glitter. Please don't ever put glitter in a cocktail because first of all, it arrived. We were like, "What is this?"
You can, but you have to put a tiny amount.
It was
They
not a
probably put
tiny
too
amount
much.
of glitter. It was not a little. It was not a little bit. So I love that because I'm such a visual.
People love fads. That
Yeah,
was a big fad a few years
was it
ago,
really?
and yeah, it was a big fad about like 4 or 5 years ago. It started where the edible glitter could be put in drinks, but
Yeah,
people do it in the wrong capacities, or they make it overwhelming.
yeah. It was a little too much glitter, but I love that you're like I start with color because I think that you have like very strong reactions to the way certain things look. So I love that that's kind of like a base sometimes.
Yeah, aesthetics are a huge selling point in a drink because half the time people will be in a bar and be like, "What's that? I want that." They don't even care what's in it. But you eat with your eyes first.
That's
We
true.
always eat with our eyes. That's why we love food television, because even though we're never going to eat the thing that's on there, we can experience it in the same capacity and believe we can smell it just because of what we see,
Hmm.
which is fascinating. So yeah, so I always start with that, and then I work my way around flavor, um, like flavor profiles and things that work together. I love using the book. If people don't own it at home, I highly suggest getting it, called The Flavor Bible. You can buy, I think it's for anyone who cooks, anybody who likes to make drinks. It is fabulous because what it does is it dissects the main ingredient that you're looking at, and then every ingredient that correlates with it, then the ones that are the strongest, and then ones that are like a secondary. And then you can start creating what I call like triangles of flavor. Because when you can get three flavors that link up together, and work in a drink, you'll have a much more dynamic flavor profile.
Huh. See, this is what you get when you get a master's in food studies. You get very scientific because it is. It's science. Like creating food and baking and cocktails is chemistry. I think
Absolutely.
there's that show right now with Brie Larson where it's something like something chemistry and she's like a
I
chef.
watched the whole thing. I
Was it
watched the whole
good?
thing. Absolutely fabulous. I love this lessons in chemistry, and I love it. And I also love it because it relates and correlates to a lot of beverage making, because we do use science all the time, and it's ironic because science was my worst grade in school. And I use it all the time. And I also use science as a way to explain how drinks come together. I teach a lot of cocktail classes, and I always go back to elements of math and physics and other components of science, because that's what it is.
So you ever tell your parents this is a very Jewish thing? It's very scientific. It's
Yeah. I always go back to my parents. My parents are very proud of me. I need to put that forward. My parents are so proud of me. They're so proud of my career. They love to brag about me in shul. They they talk to all their friends about it. It's very different now, but um, I feel so fortunate for their love and support as I took a very different pathway. That
Mhm.
obviously was very scary, but uh, they believed in me, and I wanted to show them that I could live up to their expectations of what they would have for me.
Are your parents big drinkers? Did you grow up with them trying cocktails and having alcohol in the house?
I had no alcohol in the house. We are not drinkers.
My parents are like that too.
Really? Yeah, we had this liquor cabinet that was just for my dad was entertaining fellow doctors. Like they would sometimes have little clubs that came over.
Hmm.
We had no alcohol. The most we had was my uncles would get together and have like kiddush on
Hmm.
Saturday. So to those who don't know, like after synagogue, sometimes you make kiddush, and kiddush is like the prayer over like the wine, or you would have like a little schnapps or something, and they call
Hmm.
it kiddush
Yeah.
club. So my uncles would get together and they would like drink Crown Royal. So that's like what I remember most as a kid. And also like
Oh,
any of the leftover purple bags, like we would get to put our toys in for synagogue. So there's something really nostalgic about it. When I see like purple bags, I'm like, oh, it's a toy bag for synagogue.
yeah. I mean, yeah, my parents aren't big drinkers either. So, I never really had like direction as far as like what I wanted to try, which leads me to my next question. If someone just turned 21 and they're interested in trying cocktails, what would be your advice to them?
I love question. Mazel on
Especially
turning 21.
especially because you said that your taste changed. I feel like that's how I felt about beer. I used to hate beer and now I'm a huge beer connoisseur and I love beer.
Yeah. So if you turn 21 and you're going to start having drinks, I think the best thing to do is to sit at a bar and have like maybe 2, 3 rounds. Like it's so good to start slow. And I would get one thing that's stirred, one thing that's shaken. So shaken is probably gonna be something that has citrus in it. So you're gonna get like a sour style drink. You're gonna get a more spirit forward drink, so you can kind of see the difference. And then I would get something like completely like off the wall that's on the menu. Maybe it's something tiki and tropical. Maybe it's something creamy. Maybe it's something like smoked. And also having like different alcohols in them. And that can kind of get your palate to understand what you gravitate towards naturally.
What was your first drink when you turned 21?
Oh, you only want to hear my 21 first drink? Or do you want to
No,
hear the first thing I ever
we can do
drank?
both. We can do both. My first drink ever was a what is that? The oh my god.
You had like a Smirnoff.
Oh yes. So my first drink was like a raspberry Smirnoff Ice.
Well done.
So that I am a classy chick, and I was not 21, and I can't get in trouble for that now. I think I was 18. It was so. I don't remember what my first like legal drink was, but I started off by drinking with a raspberry Smirnoff Ice.
Yeah. I actually happen to know my first legal drink because since my birthday is during winter break, I was at home and I had gotten in a fight with my parents. And so the morning after my birthday, I stole the car keys and I left a note and said, went to Columbus and also to see grandma. Don't call me. Be back in 3 days.
Oh,
Probably like most devious thing I've ever really done. And I was with my friends in Columbus and we went to this bar called Brothers. And the first thing we did was I think we ordered some drinks, but we got around to shots and we got purple Hooters, which are disgusting. But I totally remember that. And we got purple Hooters. But my first thing I ever drank, which is I have such like a Proustian like Madeline moment with it. I'm very nostalgic for it all the time. When I was very, very young, maybe like third, fourth grade, my parents let me have a little bit of wine at Shabbat dinner.
mm-hmm.
And it was Kedem's Plum Royale wine.
Oh,
Very sweet, very sweet. They still have it, but there's something in like Japanese culture called umeshu, which is a plum, like plum liqueur wine distillate, and it's the exact same thing, and I crave it all the time.
that's so
So,
funny. I know
yeah.
someone whose dad worked for Kedem, and I believe he had his bar mitzvah on a Sunday because they wanted to make sure that the bosses, like the head of Kedem, could come. So like they didn't even want them like doing anything on Saturday night. So it was actually a party on a Sunday, and we drink their grape juice on Shabbat at my house. I have like very like because that's what they'd serve like at Hebrew school. So it's very nostalgic for me the grape juice.
Yeah. So fun fact, and this is like a good takeaway for like if you want one last hot tidbit for making cocktails at home. To make a syrup, all you have to do is take a liquid, equal parts of that with sugar and mix it together at room temperature. You don't have to heat it up. One of my favorite hacks in making drinks, I would always have like a grape drink somewhere on my menu, was using Kedem's Concord grape as the base. And I would make a syrup with a heavy syrup. And it is phenomenal, especially if you wanted to make whiskey sours, but use like a grape syrup instead. It is divine. So if you ever wanted a nice hack to make some great drinks at home, Kedem Concord Grape.
So, talking about, home bars and people drinking at home, what would be some of the staples you'd suggest to someone who is looking to create a home bar, who's interested in entertaining, who's interested in maybe experimenting with cocktails themselves? What would be kind of the things that they should get to start their home bar?
Fabulous. So if you're going to start a home bar, you need really good tools. So don't just buy any tool set that you see. Get ones that are really functional. Like if you get one of those has a jigger that has a handle, that's not useful. So I get a lot of tools from either Barfly or Cocktail Kingdom. Those are really good companies and they're not that expensive. You can also find great full complete bartending toolkits on Amazon. I suggest getting a tin on tin shaker, not like the Boston one, like the really tin on tin. They're easier to open. You can hold more drink in there. And then when you're starting your own bar cart, have one of each bottle as a staple that you would in a well. So vodka, a gin, a tequila, a rum, and a whiskey. Whiskey, I would suggest bourbon or rye, and then also grab yourself a bottle of scotch just to have if you want for cocktails or to serve to people. And then from there, and also a bottle of triple sec, and good triple sec, like Combier Cointreau, not like the really sugary stuff that has no proof level. And then from there, you can make a lot of drinks. And please use fresh lemon and lime. Squeeze it yourself. Don't use the stuff in the plastic bottles that has preservatives. It'll make all the difference. So that's enough of a staple to begin with. And remember, you don't have to spend millions of dollars on the bottles that you're going to mix with. And I have to always stress that. And your drinks are only as good as your tools.
What would be your advice to someone who's interested in, making mixology a career?
I think for what mixology, this applies to mixology or like any career that you want to have, is if you're going to do something and you see if you see longevity within the space, apply yourself. Don't just phone it in. Like, it's so easy to go to the work, to your desk, and then go home. I highly suggest get involved in other ways. Start learning about your community. If there are like seminars and conferences, head there. Go to networking events. Throw yourself into the rooms. Extend your hand and tell people who you are, because the more that you can get involved, the more people are going to know your name, the more opportunity that comes around. And especially when it comes to like mixology, it's just constantly be on like the cusp of learning and of what's happening within the scene. And be a good person. No one likes no one likes a curmudgeon. Honestly, just be a really nice, good person. And make space for others. There's room for everyone at the table. There's opportunity for everyone. And when you look out for the other people, they look out for you too.
In the past, you've created cocktails that were inspired by your Jewish heritage. Is this something that you suggested, or was this brought to you as an idea? How has that come about?
I think in a lot of ways, I've always infused little bits of my Judaism into my drinks. But I just remember one week we were sitting in synagogue and I was visiting my parents at home. And in the Parsha that week, they were talking about a grouping of fruits that they had found. And I remember reading about it and I was like, oh, that sounds like it'd be really good in a cocktail. I remember sitting next to my mom and I said that. She goes, what? I was like, that sounds like it'd be great in a cocktail. So I did. I went and I made a drink with that and I was like, oh, this is delicious. So I have found there's so much inspiration, because let's get to the core of Judaism, right? Like, our holidays are about, celebrating because we survived something,
Yes.
or it's a year, and we eat, right? And there's a lot of flavors at the forefront, symbolic foods, significant bites. You can infuse all of that into drinks. They're the same staple flavors that work really nicely into beverages. So I try to do that. Like, I've made complete liquid Seder plates that I've served at Passover Seders. Obviously when Rosh Hashanah comes around, I love making drinks that I have apple, honey, and pomegranate in them. Tu B'Shvat is just like ripe and ready for like so many fabulous drinks, including like olive oil in them. And I think that that's where the creativity and fun comes into beverages, because it's such an easy way to give a wow factor to any meal that you're doing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes with like minimal work. And that's really the true hospitality behind cocktails. It's creating this incredible, memorable experience that doesn't have to be so laborious on your end.
So you are, speaking of being Jewish, you're very outspoken about your pride in being Jewish on your online platforms. Why do you think this is so important, especially with everything that's going on right now?
I've always been like a proud Jewish person, especially a proud Jewish woman, even since I was little. The theme of my bat mitzvah was Hanukkah. Like,
I'm sorry, we're gonna come back to that.
Yeah, I know. I think it's just been at the core of how I live my life. It's like how I treat other people, the lessons that I learn, the morals and values that I operate by. And so, especially in the past, I'd say in my life specifically, the past like 6-7 years, it's really come to the forefront of who I am in my work. Because I think for a while, especially getting involved in the hospitality community, I put my Judaism on the back burner in order to get career advancement. Mm-hmm. I didn't observe some holidays because big things were happening on them. I didn't stand up for myself and speak out about it. I sometimes often say that I'm having like my big Sandy Koufax moment
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I no longer will allow people to devalue the importance of Judaism and our holidays and our um, the significance of our time. And I just think as global Jewry is undergoing this huge wave of like anti-Semitism um, and fear, it's so important that if you have the ability to have a voice and to speak up and you feel comfortable doing so, that you do so. And so for me personally, of all things Judaism related, fighting anti-Semitism is at the core of my work. Um, because I'm unafraid to say that I'm Jewish. I wear a Jewish star like every day. And I I'm very proud of what Judaism represents to myself and to so many other people. So I just put the two together. So I'm like the Jewish bartender. I'm like one of a few. There's a few of us that are very outspokenly Jewish, and so it's nice because we kind of like all find each other.
So I want to go back to your bat mitzvah. You said your bat mitzvah took place over Hanukkah and the theme was Hanukkah. What was that? Tell me everything I want to know.
I'm seeing if I can find you a picture of it, just because it's just that funny, but I'm not sure if I can. So the
Find
theme
one and post it on Instagram, like for Hanukkah.
I will.
I want you to do that.
I always do. So everybody else had these themes like Amy under the stars at Broadway, or like, Rachel and New York City, the Big Apple, and like David in the NBA.
Yeah.
My bar mitzvah was on the 5th day of Hanukkah. I am born on December 27th. So no one's ever been around for my birthday. It's always around Hanukkah time. When you're a Hanukkah baby, you kind of like, a lot of you are listening can sympathize and empathize with me, because if you're born around Hanukkah, you're like, the presents. It wasn't you, like, it all got compounded together. But my mom and dad said to me, like, they reminded me, they're like, don't forget, bar and bat mitzvahs are about becoming a woman. It's about God, and it's about, the next step. So my mom's like, well, it's during Hanukkah, we should just have Hanukkah. And I was like, come on, Hanukkah. But because my brother's theme was, he was President's Day weekend. So he did like White House and presidents was his whole
that's going to be in the book. That's going in the book.
So mine was Hanukkah. And I remember I had this like massive dreidel that you could sign when you came in, but I actually I love it now thinking about it.
I'm obsessed with that.
Also, so I desperately wanted, like, Terry Macklin was the name of the DJ that everybody had. And I like went to all these I went to over 100 bar and bat mitzvahs. Okay. Like, I was that kid and I want him so bad. And my mom's like, this is about being Jewish. We're booking the Yiddish Cup klezmer band. So I had a klezmer band.
Oh my goodness.
I had a klezmer band. My bat mitzvah was during brunch time. And then the theme was Hanukkah. So I think this like really sums me up very well as a person. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I actually am so grateful thinking about it now in hindsight. I don't know. I was just at an event with Susan Alexandra, who's this amazing designer,
yes,
jewelry bags and stuff. She has a Judaica line. She just did a Hanukkah party where she debuted her menorahs, and there was a comedian there, and he's like, "What was everyone's theme for their bar and bat mitzvahs here?" And people started yelling it out, and I go, Hanukkah. The guy was like, "Wait, what?" So I don't know. I'm pretty grateful though, because it's my favorite day.
You know what's really funny is I had a daytime party, and my mom's MO was always kind of like, no one sits around and talks about their bar bat mitzvahs. I'd rather save the money and spend it on your wedding. But I feel like all I've been doing is talking about people with their bar and bat mitzvah themes. And I'm kind of obsessed with it because it's different than a wedding, because you can really go like full on theme. And I think it says a lot about like you as a person and where you were at the time, depending. And some people, like, the theme is just Jewish. Like, I talked to a rabbi who was like, she was a twin. She's like, we didn't have a theme. It was just like bar mitzvah, b'nai mitzvah was the theme.
But it's wild. And also the Adam Sandler movie that just came out, like, resonated super hard with me. And I
was visiting home when we watched that, my mom, my sister, and I, and that scene where Idina Menzel and the younger daughter are arguing about what she's going to wear was my mom and my sister, because we were also conservative. So you had to cover your shoulders on the bima. And my sister was like, I don't want to wear this like little suit outfit that was very popular in the 90s. So it was we felt very seen. Oh
my God, me too. I actually went home and I found my bat mitzvah outfit and I tried it on. I was like, this still fits. Wait, should I be taking this back with me? This is iconic.
I was a size
So,
like 00 at my bat mitzvah, so it would fit maybe on my arm. I was like, I looked like a Q-tip. I was like super thin and had very big hair.
oh, I had already gone through that phase. So like my body had like already like kind of changed a whole bunch. So, but I can't wait for this next part of your podcast. Like you're gonna have a whole other one that comes out just discussing bar
bar
mitzvah
mitzvahs.
themes.
I know. I feel like a lot of people would love to talk about their bar mitzvahs.
Yes.
So you co-authored a book with Thea James. Can you tell me about how that came about and what the process of writing the book was like? And my husband doesn't know about this book, and I think he's gonna nerd out a little bit when you explain what it is.
It's a great Hanukkah present because it costs $18.
Ooh,
And look
very
at that.
auspicious.
Yeah. So the book is called Drinking with Wizards and Dragons. It is a fantasy-oriented cocktail book. So Thea James is a Hugo Award-winning author. She is one of the foremost authorities in everything fantasy and a bit of sci-fi. So she's written lots of other books before, and she did one about cooking, like cooking with dragons and wizards. So they wanted one about cocktails. Thea and I share a mutual best friend. Her name is Leah Doyle, and Leah heard Thea was like, I need a mixologist who would kind of like get nerdy and want to do this with me. And Leah's like, you should meet Pam because she's really nerdy when it comes to dissecting drinks. So this was a really fun collaboration. Thea like laid out all of these like books and what she wanted done, and I knew a good portion of them. So some of the drinks are things you've seen before, like a martini, but I really wanted to make sure we had staples in there plus new drinks. And I wanted classics and new ones, but like I really like my butterbeer recipe personally. This was such a fun task, and also most of the drinks can be made non-alcoholic through using non-alcoholic distillates and non-alcoholic beers and wines. So if you've ever wanted to put mead in a drink, if you've ever wanted to like kind of think about like the Sandman and like all of his associated like siblings and like what they would be having, this is the book for you.
If you could bring a drink from any sort of fandom into reality, would it be that butterbeer or would it be something else?
I mean, I think butterbeer is super fun. There's something called Giggle Water that is around, and Giggle Water actually, there was some form of it that existed around like in the 1920s. We're not entirely sure what was in it. There's like posters for it. But that would be fun to like kind of bring back like full time and figure out like what it completely is. But I think there are so many flavors and foods and things that you see in these books, so it's really fun to bring it to life. My personal favorite was making things for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So I took Turkish Delight and turned it into a drink. For me, that was exciting because that was one like the first fantasy-esque books I read as a kid. I also tried to look for Narnia through the back of my closet at night times after my parents put me to bed, and I never found it.
No, never.
So
never
weird
found it.
that never happened.
So is there anything else that you want to talk about or I guess plug? Any, concepts you're working on? We talked about your book.
Yeah, I mean, I have some things in the works which I can't fully discuss right now, but I would say like stay tuned, like follow my Instagram. A lot of the things that I do, I put on my Instagram, and I know that like in the past few months, there's been a bit of a pause of cocktail content and creation as I've used this time to be more outspoken about anti-Semitism and also some things that have happened in my personal community around Islamophobia, anti-Muslim hate. So I care so much about the well-being of our communities. So I know that I will be getting back to more heavy cocktail content. But there are some things in the works. There's, some really cool projects I'll be attaching myself to in the next year and in 2024. And more than anything, I really want people to drink well. I want everyone to be sipping something delightful.
Well, with the holidays coming up, I'm hoping a lot of people will be imbibing in a responsible and fun way.
Absolutely responsibly.
So this next section, these are short form questions done in the style of the Actors Studio. So they don't need to be long answers. What is your favorite Yiddish word?
My favorite Yiddish word is fakakta.
It's a good one. What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
My favorite Jewish holiday is Hanukkah.
If you were to have a bat mitzvah today, what would the theme be?
I'd keep Hanukkah.
Hanukkah?
I go with
again?
Hanukkah. Because I still love it, and it would be around the time of my birthday anyways. So like, I love this holiday. I love everything about it. And except I would have more latkes and sufganiyot than I did at my bat mitzvah, and I do some Hanukkah related like games and things. I would lean in hard into the theme.
What profession other than your own would you want to attempt?
If I wasn't a mixologist right now, and I think just because I actually recently met him in New York, I'm so interested in the position of public advocate in our local government. I just met Jermaine Williams, and I think the idea of relating and speaking to the community and the people is really incredible and fascinating and empowering. So I would probably try to go that avenue.
If heaven is real and God is there to welcome you, what would you like to hear them say?
It's me, Alanis Morissette.
That is a very fun pointed reference.
I hope people understand that. If they don't,
I got it.
Good.
So I appreciated it. I'm sure at least, a couple other people will. If not, just Google Alanis Morissette God and you can watch a very fun movie. Well, thank you so much for joining me. If you're interested in learning more, you can follow Pam on Instagram, and she's got some great information about Judaism and cocktails. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, and happy holidays, and thanks for having me.
Like what you just heard, subscribe, and you can make sure that you don't miss any of our episodes. You can check out our Patreon, where you'll have access to special episodes and offers. And I'm also on Instagram at SheBrewInTheCity if you want to follow along with my everyday life.